One night when we were all sitting on the front porch, I heard bam, 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 bam. I thought, what? I asked Mr. Brooks, I said, what is that? What is that? He said, I don't know. He said, I heard something about that's going to run the colored folks out of Corbin. I said, run them out for what?
We used to have American Legion post here, and we used to put on some minstrel shows here. One night we had a show where Shorty Fowler, he was the fire chief. He was dressed up as a colored man, and Joe Surfer, he was a policeman. And he run into Shorty Fowler, and he told Shorty, he said, don't you know we don't have much use for colored folks around here? Shorty Fowler said, yeah, that's what I know. That's the reason I want to live here in Corbin, because the devil never would look for a nigger in Corbin.
One of the riots occurred in Corbin, Kentucky, about 60 miles from where I was born.
I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you to Corbin, Kentucky, the home of the Kentucky Fried Chicken King, Colonel Harlan Sanders. We are located approximately 75 to 80 miles north of Knoxville, Tennessee. We consider this to be one of the finest communities to live in the Kentucky, state of Kentucky.
Corbin today, for its size, is about as sophisticated a town as you're going to find. I'm satisfied that Corbin, Kentucky will continue to progress, and I think that's the way it ought to be.
I noticed that Corbin, like other towns, has a Dixie Motel. They have a Dixie restaurant. They're not the only town that has those, but again, these are some of the things that stand out when you go through a city like Corbin. That it definitely is a small southern town. But unlike most small southern towns, it has no black people. It seems like you go through any other town as long as we've been here, and you would see at least some older blacks at the courthouse area or somewhere, but not in this town.
They have chosen to live in either Barberville, Williamsburg, or north of Corbin, which is toward London, Lilly, Kentucky, a little community of Lilly, those areas. But their reasons for that decision, I have no knowledge of that. I don't feel that there is any more prejudice in Corbin, Kentucky than you'll find in any other community in the country.
My daddy always had a gun beside of him, and I'm still the same way, because I was raised that way. I grew up in a community, everybody knowed everybody, they helped everybody. And in other words, you know more about the other people than you know about yourself, but we all stuck together. I remember a time when fried chicken sold for 10 cents a pound. Now, I remember a time you get into Hippodrome Theater on Main Street in Corbin for a nickel. I went there one time and seen Roy Acup. And I've seen a lot of them over there. And I also know Colonel Sanders. Colonel Sanders would fight you. He did shoot one man I know of. Corbin was settled by Cumminses. And there was 3 brothers. One settled Whitley County, Wayne County, and Rock Castle. Well, back to that time, the railroad came in.
Every time I see that lonesome railroad train, every time I see that lonesome railroad train, it makes me wish I was going home again.
I used to come down to the railroad station with my daddy and my grandpa, and we'd sit there in the depot, you know, the front part of the depot, and we'd talk. And my grandfather, he would trade knives, and daddy, he would trade on this and that and the other. They played checkers. Mostly talk about railroad, no, that's all they talked about. I loved my daddy. I was with my daddy.
Well, I think anyone you want to talk to will tell you that the railroad is the only reason that Corbin is here. The old people who still live in Corbin finally remember it as a railroad town, and it has been that way for a long time. It built Corbin, and Corbin supported the railroad.
The jobs they were doing, and you've seen them in movies, picking up the rails and the cross ties and swinging these things in a rhythm. Blacks had the rhythm to swing those hammers. White people weren't as good at it. They were in here temporarily just building tracks over there in the L&N. And as soon as they got those switch yards built and whatnot, they'd have been transferred somewhere else. They wasn't in here taking nobody's jobs.
I think we have to look at the role of black labor after the Civil War, after the end of slavery, where black workers were used primarily as a reserve army of labor. That is, they could be called upon when there was a labor shortage and there was a need for black workers. They could also be dismissed when there was an abundant supply of labor. And in this instance, at the beginning, the outbreak of the First World War, there was a labor shortage.
Grabbed his little gun, sailed away just to fight the Hun. Oh, though there, fighting everywhere, Johnny did his share.
The white men, of course, had been inducted into the military, so black workers were called upon, were needed, especially in industries such as the railroad industry. This brought the 200 black men into Corbin, Kentucky.
Well, when I first come to Corbin, that is in World War I, and them days you couldn't hardly find anybody doing the work. Everybody was drafted in the Army.
Given that they had a relatively small black population, and all of a sudden you have this infusion, 200 black men, and then you have the return of white men who had been abroad fighting the war, return to their jobs, a return to their position within the society. So I think that there was a real concern about maintaining Corbin as people had known the town.
What started this, what you call run niggers out of town, started when we were building the East Yard. We had quite a few colored folks working for us then, and they had some shacks down there below the house where we stayed, right close to the creek over there. There was always a bunch playing poker over there. And so one night, there was two switchmen went over there, and they lost all their money at a poker game, and they came back to town and said 2 colored men robbed them of their check. So there was a a fellow they called him Pistol Pete. He always hung around the barber shops, and I've seen him several times. I didn't know what his real name was, but he formed a posse that night and run them colored people out of town.
They said that 4 niggers cut a white man up off the bed. I forgot whether he died or not, but I believe he did. I'm not sure. I heard a lot of hollering and crying and shooting. And I didn't know what in the world had happened because my husband was at work at the roundhouse. So he had went to work at 6 and worked till 6 the next morning. But when he come home, he told me they had run the niggers out of town.
The white community had a band, and they would march at the sound of music to the homes of black people, knock on the door, and they'd come out.
But they'd beat those drums and knock on your door, and you had to leave your house. And then someone told me that they left the women. Now, I don't know about that. But they took all the men and left the women.
Do you know about how many men they took?
I really don't, because I was just about 4 or 5 years old.
What did they do with the men?
Well, they claim they put them on a train.
They marched them to the train and put them on trains and shipped them out.
I had a 32 Colts in there of my own, 6 shots. Well, I said, I'll just help them out, I guess. And I just went out there and bam, 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 bam.
That's why I'm a Klansman and wear a Klansman's badge.
At the time of the Corbin riot, many people believed that white society was in peril and that violence was a necessary means of protection. This was the message of the very popular 1915 film, Birth of a Nation. Birth of a Nation sparked a resurgence in the Ku Klux Klan. Membership exceeded 5 million. 1 out of every 10 white men in America joined the Klan.
When I was a little kid, I woke up during the night and I saw a cross burning. That's where they burnt the cross.
Is there something scary about a burning cross?
Sure is. There's something scary about see tar and feathers, too.
Have you seen tar and feathers?
Yes, I have.
Many of the advances that Reconstruction had allowed were now taken away and replaced in the South with Jim Crow segregation. Blacks were disfranchised. Schools were segregated. The images of blacks were grotesquely distorted in popular culture. This was all part of the racial milieu.
When in trouble I need you, you will have to remember your own.
The attitudes that were shaped during this period would affect race relations for years to come.
I had a dog growing up. Show you a picture of him. Black, white feet, white throat, little white tip on his tail. I loved that dog. That dog knew when I was going to the service. He knew when I got in trouble. He knew when I was phoning home. He'd come up, lay on the porch and look at the phone. And it'd ring. If it was from me, he'd bark like wild, make sure somebody answered the phone. You know what his name was? Nigger.
And that was your dog?
That's right. I love that dog. That wasn't no bad name. That's because he was black, shiny, pretty, muscular. Come on, nigger. You see? I wasn't using it in a bad way. They were run out of town not because they were black. They were run out of Corbin because they were drinking, gambling, and raising all kinds of cane with their newfound pocket money from the railroad.
One of the complaints that one of your informants has given was that these black men were playing cards and making a lot of noise. Well, for some people that was having fun, but for the town at that time, that was seen as a threat. I mean, what might they do next? Might they seek to molest a white woman? Heaven forbid. Usually there was some one incident that people would point to, and that could inflame the population.
Back then, the females didn't talk to the males. I mean, like father, brother, we talked to the mother and the grandmother. My grandmother told me now, there was a girl, my great aunt, said she was attacked and mistreated by 5 black men. I'm sorry about that. Can you cut that out? Okay. Well, the black man confessed. She identified him the next day. Well, they took him up to a hanging tree. First tree they got, they done their work, which I don't think was right. And they done away with 4 that night. That's a sad story. And then the people got onto the railroad company and told them to take them out. Right across the bridge were the tap roots of the hanging trees at. Back then, if a lady got mistreated, they left up to the lady what to do. If she said skin them alive, they were skinned. If they were hanged, they were hanged. Because when people gathers in their cars and goes off to their self, man and a family, you know what they're going to do.
I have heard that story, I guess, 100 times since I've been in Corbin. And it's been told to me about 100 different ways, so I really don't know. I do know one thing for sure. There was a racial incident in Corbin that happened some 70 years ago. I would not pretend to describe that incident to you or anybody else because I don't know. In fact, I never have been told that incident by anyone who was actually there and seen it happen. You know.
For some time now, I've been doing research on racial violence in Kentucky, and one of the things that most fascinates me is the whole concept of blacks being run out of various communities. This is the Lexington Herald, and so look at this. Right on the front page, the Lexington Herald, Saturday, November the 1st, 1919. Negroes driven from Corbin by mob of whites. And like newspapers quite often back then, they will have several other headlines. Attack on railroad switchman Wednesday night given as cause of disturbance. And then they point out 500 pistol shots fired. The attacking mob of whites.
That article right there is a damn lie. So that son of a bitch trying to justify his damned expenses to come to Corbin. So he wrote up 500 shots fired and everything. I say you're wrong, and even including Corbin in your write-up, because you're going to harm Corbin and people are going to jump down your throat. Because blacks have not been discriminated against in this town.
The mob formed last night and searched the city for Negroes. The Negroes who felt the fury of the mob in the greatest degree were a gang of about 200 Negroes who had been working on the L&N grade for 10 months at South Corbin, where the railroad company is making big improvements. Crowds went to the restaurants and other public places, caught all Negro employees they could, and drove them singly or in gangs at the point of guns to the depot. Many Negroes were beaten and 200 were driven out of town. An extra coach was put on the L&N train number 31, and a carload of the Negroes were taken to Knoxville, about 90 miles south.
way I figure it, the white people thought they were being walked on. And some people won't be walked on. Like taking their jobs or acting high and mighty, they won't put up with that.
What does a black person do when he's considered high and mighty?
Well, he acts as if he knows everything and he's got all the money in the world. In fact, he's just natural big-headedness, the way I think.
Well, that would go for anybody.
That would go
Mama,
for anybody.
Not just a colored person. That would go for everybody.
There were certain types of work that was considered black man's work. By doing these jobs, one showed that he knew his place.
I've heard people say, well, what does it mean about they know their place? You see? Then they'd get out of place when they started mixing and mingling.
And then that's when things...
That's when things, I imagine, got rough for them. I was born in Corbin, Kentucky, off of Engineer Street, 2 blocks from the bridge that you go across when you enter Corbin, and raised mostly in London, Kentucky, because following the right, my mother moved from Corbin. My grandfather was Charlie Kincaid, and he was one of the richest persons in Corbin. He ran a saloon and a hack service, and that was in the main part of town.
Why did he leave Corbin?
Well, I think he got mixed up with some white women, and finally took one of the women and left, went to Cincinnati, and opened a saloon there. Once they got out of the South and crossed that Mason-Dixie line, well, you was free, absolutely free.
People were living here, people were working here, and they were just physically removed. And we look at this today, no trace of these people at all. And I guess it's been this way for, probably 65 years or more, that people have come through this way and forgotten all about what happened to them, yet the legacy of all of this still lives right on in the community of Corbin.
While I worked up in Ohio, we had to get on the bus, trolley car, and there was a black girl tried to knock me away because I reckon she had the big head. I don't know now about the woman. I really don't know. And I said, no, don't do me that way. I said, I'm Cummins from Corbin, Kentucky, and she run like a scalded dog. And the reputation that my back people has made still hangs over her head.
I had a fellow one time tell me, and he drank quite a lot of whiskey, but he was a pretty decent kind of a fellow, and he said, Roy, he said, I'm going to tell you something, and I've never forgot this. He said, you can go to church and Sunday school all your life, and nobody will ever call you a Christian, but he said, you can get out on the street one Saturday night, get drunk, and get arrested. The rest of your life, you're a drunk. And I think this kind of applies to the misconception of the racial situation about Corbin, Kentucky. One time, they had a problem, and it's always stayed with us, primarily, I think, because blacks never did choose to come back and be with us anymore. I think that's really behind us.
I think Corbin does have a different image or a different reputation than other communities in the state, and I think primarily because, well, there are 2 reasons. One is because in Corbin. Currently, there is only one black resident of Corbin. I think that makes a difference because it's real hard to deal for the citizens of Corbin to deal with the problem if they don't see it every day. Racism is a lot more subtle, and it's a lot harder for people to understand that. People do not wear sheets, so it's a lot more subtle, and people have a lot harder time understanding racism.
Corbin is not a racist community.
The town you were from, I'll bet you that when you was growing up, people had made niggers, colored or blacks, whatever you want to call them, step aside when they went down the sidewalk. That never happened here in Corbin. Never saw it happen.
I do believe that we're more modern today than we were then.
Do you feel that there's any purpose in looking at the legacy of the riot?
That I see none whatsoever. In fact, I feel that this, in some instances, creates more problems than it solves. I feel that in lots of instances through the media, I think the exposure of those situations only creates in the minds of people that, well, maybe we need to change those situations. And I feel that exposure is not the way to correct some misdeed that maybe did take place many, many years ago.
You know, they say that the racism's not here, but, you know, these people's parents, you know, it goes back several generations, and, you know, it's there to a certain extent, you know, in their children. And whether they like to admit it or not, it's there, you know, I mean, it's obvious.
I wouldn't mind for a couple to come here, especially if they look like Whitney Houston.
Fucking niggers, what they are.
So you heard that there was a reason that we were making this film?
A bunch of niggers trying to come in. So there's gonna be a bunch of blacks trying to move into Corbin, so there's gonna be a documentary for it.
Well, some people we talked to said that if blacks came in, it would be a good thing. You don't think it would be?
I don't. No. Oh no.
Anybody will smoke some pot? Hands, come on in there.
Get your damn ass in here. God damn. Parents see that, they'll die.
Well, they say we don't like them, but I think they're cool as hell. I'm serious.
Hey, Buck, what do you think about black people?
Nigger! Nigger!
Black people should not live here. They never have, and they should live here.
I like the way they talk, man. It's funnier than hell. Shit, bro.
People have kept their attitudes and they pass them down to their kids. And that's the way people still think. I don't know. Very closed-minded town.
They shouldn't live here. I mean...
Because they're thucking nigger, right?
Yeah.
Can't say that, they say thuck. Thucking nigger.
I cannot believe that a lot of our young people today, unless they're trying to get your attention, I don't believe they honestly believe that.
We get drunk on the weekends, go out and get some women and take them home. That's what we do on the weekends, man.
Well, everybody goes around in circles and wastes their gas mainly. That's about it.
Well, there's a couple of counties around that'll come around just to cruise. About all there is to do around here, though.
Tennessee welcomes you.
Two jellyfish. Bootleggers buy it from them, and they'll come up here and sell it for like $1 or $2 more, a 6-pack.
Climb over the fence.
Well, here we are.
Well,
I know the people's opinions around here. They think that there should be one city out of the whole United States where they should live in a completely white. I'm serious now.
White society.
A completely white society. I mean,
This is it.
you're looking at it. But I don't have anything against them.
How about
at all.
comment? They've done a wonderful job. I mean, it's
This
so
is
beautiful.
White City, America.
Really?
To your left,
It is.
we have the KKK.
Where do you think prejudice comes from?
yeah, that I cannot answer that because I do not know.
It's something that's handed down, and they teach your children. Because I know a lady come to my school one time, and she was from Virginia, and she was selling insurance, and she was telling me that she didn't realize that people were just people, and all of them were the same, that her parents had told her different.
David, would you consider your mother to be a prejudiced person or not a prejudiced person?
Not a prejudiced person.
Maclean, how about you? Is your mother?
She doesn't have a prejudiced bone in her body. She treats everybody just the same.
You show me a village with 200 people and I'll find you're a racist in that village. I mean, you know, they're around. It's not right. Kentucky may have more than its share, and I'll tell you the reason why. There's been an awful lot of statistics kicked around, and of course, this has never come out of those statistics. But you know, we have the highest percentage of people who do not hold high school diplomas of any state in the United States of America. Now, this is not a charming thing to have to say, but it's the God's truth.
Probably everybody carries within them prejudices. Hopefully a person is able to control their own prejudices and to go beyond them. I would disagree with those who think that Corbin is more racist than other communities or more prejudiced than other communities. Sometimes I think Corbin may have more of the mentality of a white suburbia that's around big cities where there are blacks in the area, but they're really not in your neighborhood, where there are blacks living near Corbin, but not in Corbin.
Well, our second home game, isn't it? Oh, nice one.
What do most people do when they get out of high school here?
Most people that leave school here go to college around here. You know, hardly anybody goes away. Go to Eastern or to University of Kentucky.
I guess I got the right thing right here, the right thing. Whoops.
Corbin, in particular, I think, is a window through which we can understand racism in the United States, in the society as a whole. What happened in Corbin is not unique to what's happened in other parts of the country, in Forsyth County, Georgia, and Cicero, Illinois. But how do we understand the legacy of racism? Here we are 70 years or more after the race riot of 1919 in Corbin, Kentucky, but yet some of the attitudes that people held more than 70 years ago are still held by individuals today. Something occurred, something continued in this particular town as it has occurred, as it continues in towns and cities across the country where black people have not lived and do not live today.
And I'm proud to be here, and that's Corbin's #1, and I think they do a good job for me tonight.
We were always told, even as early as 6th grade, hey, the toughest team to play is Corbin because they don't like blacks.
When that play's been there for them all night, I'm surprised that they just now went to that and tried to go ahead and pitch a football, because it's been there all night. They can hurt Corbin outside.
You know, when we went in there to play, we were scared to death. I mean, you know, it was bad enough when we come out, we got rocked. I mean, you know, they'd throw rocks at your buses. They'd throw the big cinder blocks. You know, we had a couple times where they were thrown through the complete windshield.
In Corbin?
In Corbin, yeah. And we've had to drive back. We had to drive back one night, and this is when I was a sophomore, and this is a basketball game, and they just crashed the whole front window, and we had to ride back home without it, and everybody was scared. They made us all lay down in our seats.
Well, we love our football. We love our basketball. We have a large following in football and basketball. It is a good place to live. It's a good place to rear your children.
Miss Cherry White, 17-year-old daughter of Michael and Dottie White, escorted by Shannon Sam.
We like to keep our young people. We like to keep them coming back to our town, because that's the only way that you're ever going to have a better town, is when you keep the people.
17-year-old son of Mr. and Mrs. Jim.
Well, to me, Corbin is special, because about everybody and their brother is my kinfolks through by my people. If it's not by my mother's side, it's from my daddy's side. I call everybody my kinfolks here.
I don't think that there are problems with traditions or habits binding a particular community together, giving it a sense of identity, as long as that's a sense of identity that's not exclusive.
Okay, Anna, can you move in just a little bit, and everybody else on this side, so there's not right?
After all, we have to recognize that America, it's not a flat pattern. America is really a mosaic.
That's Spike, and that's the athlete, the little brown one behind us. He usually chases me off the lane, the little brown one. But he's not going to chase today, he's just looking at us. I am a yuppie in a two-income world that only has one income, so that's sort of why I deliver newspapers. I grew up in Corbin. My grandparents moved to Corbin. I'd say they were here by 1920. I'm not sure exactly when they came, but they moved with the railroad. Everyone here goes to church on Sunday, and I've gone all of my life too. They are concerned for each other, and if there's a death in your family, usually someone from one of the churches will serve. They will keep coffee made and different things for the people who come to your home to express their sympathy to you.
We have a church-oriented town. We have many large churches and many small churches, and the services are well attended. I have not been familiar with this in recent years. It's been, you know, a town that really has any problem with ethnic minorities. We have no such problems as that. Well, primarily because we just don't have the ethnic minority living here.
From my first marriage, I have a daughter, which is nice. Alicia's one of the most long-standing relationships in my life and one of the most successful. I'd like to have a man like Alicia, won't I? Guaranteed. I think teenagers probably have the worst time of all, finding something to do here.
We're not even alone here.
It's just a small town, definitely, and it's nothing like Mayberry.
2 or 3 years ago, they were put on every vacant building on Main Street
it's definitely strange stuff. I mean, here you have Hitler sings, and then you have the swastikas on the sides. The power-crazy Pope John Paul II, because of Reagan's Irish Catholic background and his lust for the furtherance of the Vatican's world domination, he has made sure that we, America, are now the 107th nation that has given power and praise to the corrupt, anti-Christian Vatican. It's really cute stuff.
I'm not prejudiced. I mean, I'm not going to say I like every black person I've ever met, but,
I'm not.
you know, after you live here a while, you know, and you see one and you just freak out. It's a black person, you know, wow, what are they doing in Corbin? And you start watching them, and then they get nervous because you're watching them.
We go down to visit Knoxville, you know, often because we have some family down around there. And I'll find myself, and, you know, I don't really consider myself as being racist or anything, you know, but I see blacks, and after a while, I mean, you live here long enough, you're uncomfortable around them. I mean, I never had before, but you get down there, and, you know, it's suddenly, it's just odd that that they're there, but you don't really notice anything until you get out of Corbin, and it's a different world.
We went to Corbin to do some shopping, and I never shall forget that there was a small little white child, and she said, "Mama, what's that?" As if we weren't human. Said, "What's that?" And the mother said, "Shh." Said, "They'll get you."
If you exist in a society in which whole generations of people do not know how to interact with other people who are Americans, you have missed something. No matter how much you think your community is wonderful, how much you think it's without problems, you have missed a part of this country that is very vital to its survival. You can't go on believing that you are therefore a better American because you missed this. Okay? We are all moving forward into the 21st century. There are things we're going to have to know about each other if we're going to succeed in a world where the ozone layer is going to disappear on us. That's going to kill me. It's going to kill white people. It's going to kill Puerto Ricans, Indians. It's going to kill everybody. So we have to find ways, it seems to me, to begin at least to know something about each other in order to solve some of the problems we have.
I did have a newspaper reporter in Corbin ask me, you know, what do we do? Do we put a sign out on I-75 saying blacks are welcome? And obviously that she didn't believe that, nor did I, but they've got to begin to change their image internally.
If you got white folks suggesting solutions for minorities, it comes across somewhat as patronizing a group that's probably felt it's been patronized all too much. And without a minority in the community trying to move us along, we probably won't move very far.
I can't say I'm really familiar with other communities in the state that have had roads called Nigger Creek Road. I can't think of another example. To me, it just says that this is a community not really willing to make a change. What I would like to see come from Corbin is an acceptance that, yes, we do have our racist and we do have our problems and we want to deal with them. The mayor or city officials have to try to deal with it.
Why in the hell are y'all here? Now listen to me. What are you doing the film about?
I'm doing
about Corbin and the black people that are in it, right? Yeah, I know what it's about. My dad was in it in the beginning. Yeah, that's right.
Do you hate blacks, Justin?
No, I don't. That's what I'm trying to fucking say right here. I don't hate blacks. But 90% of blacks that come to Corbin screw up shit, you know what I mean?
You
just passing through there.
Oh, yeah, if you're passing through. You know, you're supposed to be on that interstate, buddy. You're supposed to be on that interstate. I wouldn't drive through Corbin right now. Not at night. I got night. You know, them cops, buddy, they pull you over.
That's what I say. They're one of the biggest bunches here.
Ah, maybe Corbin wake up. I don't know.
This is one of those communities where it just has a sense that it's unfriendly. Again, if there were other black people around, then you could say, well, this may not be too bad. But you would think in all of those years, somebody else would have come here. But clearly, nobody has.
The one thing I was hoping was that we would definitely be out of here before it began to get dark. I just don't want to hang around here. Jeez.
I now live in Napoleon, Ohio. I wanted to get away from Kentucky because I felt here I'd be treated more as an individual. Some of the things that happened, whether I didn't know the truth or how they happened, but I knew one thing, that there's other places in the United States besides Corbin or Kentucky. At the time, it wasn't no big deal as far as breaking the color barrier. That's not what we were thinking of at all when I decided to go to Corbin. They just, I just wanted to play for an excellent coach, a hard coach. Then that would up my chances of getting a scholarship to a major college. It was going to happen. I mean, I was already enrolled in school. I was practicing with the football team. Most of the kids really wanted it, and they were pulling for it. Until, I guess, I don't know who stepped in, but, there was death threats. They called my mom in Middlesboro, and she called me in Corbin, scared to death, because of the threat. I think you deprive the kids, from growing up around different races, because when you get out in the real world, you have to deal with it, and it's much faster and much more competitive than what Corbin is. And hey, this is not, my daddy or my uncle is not the sheriff or the principal or this. When you get out, it's what you can do as a person, and that's all that matters.
If I stayed here with you, girl, things just couldn't remain the same. 'Cause I'm as free as a bird. How about you, baby?
With the technology like the TV, see, black people have never been on TV, and you get all these different characters and all that, and then people begin to take to them more.
On the general rule, there's good ones. There's good colored people. Don't hold nothing against them. Because they're human just like we are. Well, we could have been black. Who knows? God rules, not man.
But I heard that they had a colored man that was taking over, and we're not going to put up with it. I heard that now, walking around in roses.
You know what that was? You want to know the truth on that? He come rocking in here and he tried to boss the people that were building McDonald's. And he was walking around over there bossing the union crew, telling them how to do this and how to do that. They knew how to build that building better than he did. It wasn't the people in Corbin that run him out. It was a crew that was building the McDonald's that called the people that owned McDonald's and said, get this man out of here, he's aggravating us to death.
I don't believe the town leadership, and I'm not here pointing a finger at anybody else in some way, including myself in that group. I don't think the leaders in the community have helped Corbin and helped people Corbin to face up to the history and to face up to our own traditions. We haven't discovered the true story of what happened in the past. And I think that's a first step for dealing with the present. And forgetting just continues the wrong.
Of course, that was all the talk in the morning, running them out. And of course, when I went down to the shop the next day, I naturally, like anybody else, I was inquisitive and I tried to find out what it was all about. Well, they told me they run all the niggers, as I said, out last night. I said, where did they run them? Said, well, we put them on a boxcar and shipped them. I forget now what they said. Anyway, they left. Of course, that's been 60 some odd years ago.
If I'm a racist, it's because I don't like Japs. I just don't trust them. I just don't trust them. You won't find anything in my house that comes from Japan.